Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows. Hi, and thanks again, everybody. We're on the road this week again in Los Angeles, and this time visiting a man who is one of the great stars of this century, whose voice is everywhere, and I'm talking about Mel Blanc, a man who was more than just the voice of the Warner Brothers cartoon characters, a great radio actor, a commercial pitch man, and as I found out when I sat down with him, an all-around very nice guy. Mel was in a horrible car wreck years ago, broke every bone in his body. We'll talk about that later. And when I caught up with him, he was still using 2 canes. Unfortunately, we had some technical problems, so I sound very off mic during the interview. But you can hear my questions, and Mel is there, and I know you'll love this. The first thing I wanted to know was, how did Mel get in the mood to do all those different cartoon voices?
It's a very funny thing, but when I used to do these voices, Craig Brown, who was the sound effects Oscar winner, would take a picture of me on every voice that I did. I finally said to him, Craig, for God's sake, how many pictures you taking of me? Why do you take all the pictures of me? He says, Mel, you look exactly like the character you're portraying. I can tell just by looking at the picture what voice you're doing.
Wow.
So I said, well, that's crazy. I don't know why. He says, but you take a look at these pictures. And he showed me the pictures, and sure enough, I looked like I was going into a different voice every time I changed the expression on my face.
One of my favorite episodes is the one, I call it Jack Then He Catches the Train. You played the plumber who was had to fix a leak in Jack's house before he...
Oh, yeah.
And it's an episode that seems to have everybody in it when he goes to the train station.
Yeah.
How do you explain for someone who's maybe never done any acting, I'm not going to use the word psych yourself up, there's always that, I forget what the name of the acting school is where you have to be the part, but you actually can't ad-lib or be a part without losing yourself in it. You just have to let go, don't you?
Well, you have to have acting ability, and you have to know what you're saying, and you have to have a good ear to know that you're doing it properly. This is a very important thing. And Jack said to me, he said, you know, Mel, there are the 2 greatest actors in the world. I said, who's that? He says, Jackie Gleason is not only a comedian, but he's a fine actor. And he says, another fine actor is Mel Blanc. I said, well, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, actually, he says, but you go into this acting terrifically when you do these crazy voices. And incidentally, on his radio show, I did all these different characters, maybe 5 or 6 during one program. But going into television, it kind of frightened me. I wondered, well, what am I going to do? You know, they see me once and they know I can't be the different guy. But Jack was very clever at this. He used me off stage on train leaving track 5 for Anaheim, Azusa, and Cucamonga. And nobody would see me, but they'd know it was the voice again. And Jack had a faculty of finding a right spot for me in television when television came along. And he knows quite well that I did a pretty good drunk. And he had my voice off stage and me on stage doing this drunk character. And the drunk character is the guy that talks like he's been having a lot of liquor. And Jack thought, well, you know, it's pretty tough to do that. He said, but you do it so great. He says, we'll have that on the television show off stage.
What was it like in radio? I think the one thing I'm having a hard time understanding about is when you did it before a live audience, when there was a live radio show, you're reading a script, of course, standing in front of the microphone. Sometimes, for example, when Frank Nelson would come on the radio show, before he would even say yes was the way he would say it, the audience knew who he was, and you would hear this little tittering in the audience anticipating. Were you recognizable enough that the audience in radio knew
The people in radio knew who I was, and I was doing all of these voices. And they would show their recognition by applauding every time I do one of these different crazy voices. They'd applaud, you know. In radio, they had a lot of applause. Mm-hmm. And they would do that for me, practically every voice that I did. And it was quite a wonderful thing.
I mentioned to Mel Blanc that one of my favorite characters that he did for Jack Benny was the Mexican who only said "sí" and just a few other words.
We started that in radio, the Mexican character, "sí."
The one-word answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
"Sí." That's all he ever says. Says, and your sister, what's her name? So.
Your sister?
What does she do for a living? So. Just use the one word. But that became very popular with Jack, and he laughed every time at rehearsal. And he'd break up, and he'd say, "I'm not going to break up on the show. So it comes the show, I'm not going to laugh at you. So don't expect me to laugh." I said, "You want to bet?" So it came the show, and he broke up every show. He'd say, "Well." Then he'd look at me, and he'd see me, and he'd start laughing.
Was it hard to get live radio to come out to time? Did you find yourself having to throw half a page away? You're talking about getting applause. Because after a while, the writers, I'm sure, anticipated where all the applause and all the entries were going to be.
I don't know if they could actually time it, but at rehearsals, Jack would always write down what should stay in the script and what shouldn't stay in the script. And then we'd have the rehearsal with all of the thing, and then he would time, actually, the things that he wanted to throw out, so that he would have maybe, in a half-hour show, you would have 28 minutes of actual laughs and actual dialogue, and the rest would be finished with laugh-ins that people actually laughed at. And boy, he was quite accurate at that. Very seldom that we didn't come out just in time. We had to.
Was there anybody else in that era who let the other people get the laugh as much as Benny did? You watch those shows, and he's just the perfect foil for everybody. He just prided himself that everyone else seemed to get, except for that slow double take he would do, but he was reacting to somebody else.
He wasn't only my boss, but he was one of my best friends too. I was in the hospital. I'd been there for 2 months, unconscious, and I finally came out of it, and I saw Jack Benny there. And I said, "Jack, what are you doing here?" He said, "I just thought I'd drive by and see how you're feeling." Well, my son Noel told me, he said, "Dad, do you know that Jack Benny has been here every day, the 21 days? He says, when he couldn't come, he'd call me, and I would bring him over to the hospital, waiting for you to come out of your unconsciousness." So,
good friend.
Oh, the best. As I said, when I see the character and see what he's going to do, I feel like I'm that character, and I can do it that way. And it is an inward feeling, truthfully, that you are that character that you're doing, that you're ad-libbing or talking about. And I've always felt that way. And as I told you, Treg Brown took so many pictures of me, and then he said, "You look different in every voice you do."
When you were doing the Mexican, your whole face?
Sí.
Can you give me a little capsule of the familiar characters you do, what you perceive their personality is?
Yeah. I have to remember all of the things. I bring the thing along. Speedy Gonzales, down in the corner here, the fastest mouse in all Mexico.
Sí, my name is Speedy Gonzales, fastest mouse in Mexico. Texas wouldn't give to the mouse. I think, epa, ándale.
Pepe Le Pew is a little French skunk. And he talks like a little French skunk, and he chases the pussycat and catcher and kiss him. Oui. And these two characters on the top is Sylvester and Tweety. Now, I knew I had to get two voices. One was, Sylvester was a big sloppy cat, and Tweety was a baby bird. So I had to get each of them a voice. I started with Tweety as a baby voice.
Oh, I thought a putty cat. I did see a putty cat.
You better fall, putty tat, fluffer and fuckatash.
It must feel wonderful to be able to do that. You shift gears and all of a sudden you create.
It does feel wonderful to do it, and to have people recognize you. And that's why I have a little book of these things that I always give to people who ask for an autograph. They're so happy. I'm so happy to give them an autograph because they do recognize me. And they'll say, "Can I have your autograph?" And they'll give me a piece of paper. And they're tickled about it, and I feel wonderful about that. They have courage enough to come out and say that, "Can I have an autograph from a person that I like very well?" So it makes me feel wonderful.
You've made all of us feel a lot better.
Gee, thanks, Doc.
And everybody recognizes that voice. That's my favorite. I've got it on my shirt.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A conversation with the great Mel Blanc. Sorry I was so off mic, but we captured the spirit of one of the great talents of all time, Mr. Mel Blanc. And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. And check YouTube for more American Montage programs.